Howdy, Internet, Blue Asterism Solstice, and today I have a very special little thing going here. Now, I don't do very much reactionary stuff. In fact, this isn't actually going to be really a reaction thing at all. This is going to be more of stuff I myself, as a veteran of Armored Core games, am personally looking at to like better convey certain concepts and ideas of what's really kind of coming. Now, some of this is concepts of my personal observations of little details that I currently kind of like dorking, kind of nerding out over. And other details are going to be like features and functions I've kind of paid attention to in this new trailer for Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. Now, for a little context of what's the given kind of details of the story here, is that in Fires of Rubicon, there is some kind of like a special substance of the future for like energy and like communications and such discovered on the planet Rubicon. Now, something happened where it kind of caused a cataclysmic event that ignited the solar system on fire with it. And since then, the substance resurfaced on Rubicon again for greater attention and redevelopment and try to, I don't know what else. But that's the part of the point of the game, is to figure out where that really is kind of going and who's probably the actual trustworthy folk in the hands of any of this matter. But I guess without further ado, let me just sort of adjust this a little bit, because FromSoft loves their louder audio portrayal, and my voice is rather quiet usually, beyond my ability to help it. Now, off the bat, we see this interesting sort of solar energy collection array in the upper atmosphere, or like outside of orbits, out in orbit, I should say, of this planet for whatever reason, as opposed to being on ground level. It's put into literally space and encircling the planet. How it comes and goes is beyond me, but we see this interesting looking structure here also, which could have something to do with it, with some other kind of lines to it. But whether or not we do find anything out of that sort is to be figured out yet. We see a bit of like what could be ambient environment around the planet off further in space, which could be like rings of like dust clouds or something around it, or it could be just something even further out, who knows. But that's likely its actual star that it orbits. You see this kind of here, sort of like debris and whatnot, which could be from other destroyed crafts in the atmosphere. Who knows from how far away or how close, or how much of that is from like destroyed satellites or something that just never left orbit, because that is fundamentally a literal issue, is space debris and the clutter of destroyed wreckages of satellites and that's in outer space. And it's become an actual like topic of, hey, we need to slow this kind of a thing down. Like, that's physically one of the more worldwide nation to nation conversations of trying to keep at a control inconsistency. But carry on.
We're close to Rubicon. Wake the dog up.
Now he says dog, but basically we would play as a mercenary, aka a raven. And surely enough, this trailer was released on International Crow Raven Appreciation Day. So good on you, FromSoft, for thinking of that.
Handler Walter verified.
Quite possibly that voice was Walter. And more than likely a main employer. Especially considering the term handler in front of it. And calling us the dog in this situation. Alright.
Activating cerebral coral control device.
So cerebral, implying it, we have great connectivity and control to our brain or nervous system. As for coral, I think that's in some sort of reference to the substance found on this planet, but I don't know much more than that. Now, some people are going to be like, these seem kind of pointless. Now, with my attention to stuff like James Webb Telescope, so part of the extra thrusters in that is for course correction. And what's the current paces of momentum? Like, they'll have different layers for different amounts of necessary course correction, is what it is. And to suffice with the right amounts to the right pace, they need to account for what's going on ahead of it still, and have just an extra thicker layer behind it all. So that's kind of like the planning mentality in that overall. So this part was in turn exhausted already, but there was no need and necessity of further course correction until this particular point they've reached. And that's the overall process of how that works. It's all part of like the precisionry of it. Fire very fast. Now, from what I gather, this is some kind of excavation site of sorts. We're going to see a lot of sites like this in appearance that are mostly for excavation and processing, and maybe even factory production. And this is all going to be because of the planet itself. Now, a lot of it seems like it's going to be a little desolate looking, but also very factorized and productive and booming in its own right. But man, am I a dork for how cool this looks. I noticed little details like this, and at first glance I stop and look at that and think to myself, now why would it be like that going that way? And off the top of my head, it's something along the lines of it can take different forms of purpose to shift out another section of it. At least that's where it is in my head, but I don't personally understand any alternatives to that in engineering functionality, which could very well suggest something very different. So don't take my word for that. Probably take someone else's word for that. So someone else, it probably looks like either more of a marvel or more of like a, I don't think this quite works like that, but I'll give it to you. we see there is still other like alternative sources of power despite the supposed like substance. And they have an interesting little array of wind turbines here bridging across this gap, which I question how dangerous that is in the long term. Like I would think there would be a risk of like earthquakes or Rubicon quakes, just like either closing or spreading it and just causing it to uneven out and fall apart. That's just kind of where my brain is at personally. And then I seen this, and this particularly had my attention. And I was like, well, these just sort of spread out and fit in, so I guess that's a little less of a risk of that kind of a concept. But this looks like it's someplace else, and I don't quite understand what the point is of this. We don't like see it like move. And to me this looks like some kind of like a power facility as an overall. Possibly like very radioactive. But we see very few like stemming upwards features to kind of like cycle any like use of like water as coolant or anything like that. But then again, this is another planet, so maybe like the method is like supposedly different and has like a very different process in a different location with different substances and a different means of disposal. Because if we're talking like nuclear, it would use water as a coolant method on the outside, and it would also use the heat collected in the water to use as a method of motion to kind of to generate energy to be collected. But detail. Now we do see there is still some expression of the use of energy here. What that really means is to be defined, but this could be anything else still. Heck, this could be a shredder underneath there, and I have no idea. But it looks absolutely awesome, and I just love all these almost more hanging designs. To me, this looks more experimental, maybe. Now, keep in mind, there is a lot of these kinds of concepts in like Armored Core, and a lot of it can be pretty blatantly ignored pretty easily. But more of like an attention span you have for it, the more you can like actually pay attention to it, is something I kind of learned over the years, especially like paying attention to like more NASA projects, what they're researching, how they're researching it, etc. Yeah, to me that looked like it could have been like related to like the new substance in practice. Augmented human. So correct. So the player is considered augmented with their craft.
Augmented human C4621 has awakened.
Looks absolutely awesome. Very factory familiar in concept. Like I said, like drilling operations or mining or excavation in general. You're gonna see more stuff kind of like this ahead, but my gosh, I love how it just goes back and forth in all these crazy ways. Up ahead, up top. Now, you've seen lasers and you've seen no indicators. There is going to be HUD, that much is for sure. How the HUD is gonna look, I have no idea. But In Armored Core 5, it was incredibly minimalistic. Now, something I can immediately point out in this specifically screenshot is that this is straight up a back weapon. In Armored Core 5, we had shoulder mounted alternative weapon that would just swap out with your fore weapon on your arm. This is just a straight up back weapon. So that's kind of how it's going to work. It's just going to be mounted on your back, and you can swap between this to that, but without some extra whatever going on. And this is so huge and cool that I love it. But this does reassure the purpose of excavation in concept, because that is specifically how stuff like that is usually set up with construction tools, especially. But word of advice, do not go underneath that. When it steps down, it's just gonna kill you. Straight up. No exceptions. That's just what it's gonna do. I've tested it. And I don't mean in this game. I mean in Armored Core for Answer. That's 100% how that worked. Getting underneath the spirit of Motherwell when it steps down. Crushed. Fell through the geometry of the floor also. The death was instant. It was a bit like that one episode of Futurama where it was like Zoidberg's people kind of like took over Earth, and it was like his lawyer just like, you may crush me, but you can't crush my spirit. And he gets crushed. It's like, ow, my spirit. Yeah, these are some very cinematic FromSoft shots. That much is for sure. Not much to point out in this particular shot. But these are going to be just basic turret enemies. But that stands out to me as being very Elden Ring. They even do like a similar jump screen, like shot at it. But it reminds me of the Spirit Springs. Now, overall, FromSoft takes concepts it's investigated into and likes to take little bits and pieces into it and expand on it into alternative works or experiments into other directions. So that yeah, that's very FromSoft, and that's very likely part of the inspiration with that. Dang it. Now you see the sort of like a shield thing here. It's either a passive shield or it's something they have on them that can do part of the absorption. And you see this here. So they have a shoulder mounted energy shield piece, which is actually an interesting detail to me, that you can choose maybe to not have that, which is actually almost a mind-boggling concept. Now, what I do not know is what that really means for the shield. If there's going to be still some amount of damage, or if it's going to be like complete damage negation. Now, historically, shields in the Armored Core games, in there was one in Gen 2, but I never actually used it. In Gen 5, it was just basically a riot shield. It just did some amounts of like damage negation, but it was probably slightly like more effective than Gen 4's to certain ammo types. In Gen 4, it was a cover your entire body and it was basically built into your craft, but you were able to also like weaponize it as of Armored Core for answer. But those enemies with shields, they would be vulnerable from behind, but it looked like they also had like good turning ability. Now you see this. Someone might suggest this is probably a newer concept. This is a Gen 5 concept. This is the scan mode. Now here's the current present enemies, where they're facing, and with the actual HUD in that, you'd be able to analyze each one specifically, what it's called. If it's an AC, you'd be able to tell its emblem. You would also be able to see how many like life points equivalently it has, the armor points as it's called, the AP. Now this to me is an interesting thing, and it makes me wonder if that's like a feature of like the legs, or if that's just like a feature of like the craft, but it has limited compatible functionality depending on the craft itself, by like the legs or thrusters or energy output and overall weight. But this is a cool feature and very much reminds me of those droids from Star Wars. And we still have the Armored Core 5 kick. Spread missiles, Armored Core 4 in nature. Some people are gonna suggest something about the drifting as a tank, and I'm just thinking, you're thinking about that a little hard. Now, between this and that previous thing, let me just go back to that a sec. Better look at it. Some people think this is probably going to be a weapon we have, and I'm not so sure. The presentation of this, I feel like it could be just its own kind of enemy. That's not exactly a new thing to Armored Core, to have irregular features to a craft from yourself. But it's still very possible there could be things we can collect, put together or something, or finds, and it would be essentially that. Although I don't think it would work the same as doing this long-winded whip that seems like it would be too slow for PvP. As for the worm concept, we've seen something like this in Daemon X Machina, though I haven't personally played it. There was like drill worm things, but they had more like wheels on the bottom of them, and they were done notably quite differently. Maybe a little more thicker drill on the front of the head or something, and looked maybe a little more terrifying in my opinion. To be honest, I only seen the trailer for Daemon X Machina. I never really played it. I played 2, 3, Silent Line, 4 for answer, 5 verdict today. So I can't really attest for this, nor Chromehound functions and features, or which is which. But I do know this looks amazing. And this is an interesting presentation. Now, seeing this here like this suggests to me it could be something sort of like that back piece shield. What else that could mean, I have no idea. But it tells me that could be part of the inspiration and how that explosion one looked like could work. Where it's like an energy explosion. That would be half based on Armored Core 4 Answer's assault armor, where you basically take your shield and essentially weaponize it, which is way cool. And you would just be need of a certain core piece and generator type, and you would be able to use it in 4 Answer. It was the coolest thing ever. It was so fun. I used it like any chance I had, although it'd be a detriment to my defenses, in which case I just had to play a lot more carefully after each use. But it's like, it saved you ammo. It costs you like nothing to use besides your safety for like 10 seconds, maybe 15. Which, in a FromSoft game, that's a big deal. But it's like, if you're careful about it, it's not that big of a deal. But, yeah, I do wonder how many alternatives of that kind of a concept there is with the back weapons in this game. Otherwise, this looks like it's probably just like a machine gun. This could be just like a pulse laser rifle or something. A regular laser rifle. An assault rifle. You're going to find, if you're new to these games, there is quite a colorful variety of like rifles alone. Energy weapons, non-energy weapons, as well as the flavors of damage, how fast they shoot and everything, range. It's an absolute treat to experiment with and find your personal favorites and balance to it. Like, that part alone is pretty fun. And then you can do all these different ways to make your mech move exactly how you want it to. Whether it's fast, slow, do hard hitting, do incredibly fast and incredibly like nimble, fast-paced jumping, flying. There's all kinds of ways you can really direct that in terms of combat flow or mission flow in general. And then you can still like get really intricate in how you want to do paint jobs, make your own logo emblem, and collect that of enemies you defeat. But this is actually a pretty good thruster, actually, in terms of detail. We have like this laser shotgun thing. First time we've seen something close to this was actual shotguns, which were mostly like an Armored Core 4 thing as a favorite. But as a lasering concept, I want to say that's more of a Daemon X Machina concept, where you see these like geometric lasers and such. But this is what I mean by like that energy explosion.
One of the infamous handler Walter's hounds. Interesting. You ready to climb the wall?
But the game suggests he must be like some kind of ally, more than likely in this scenario. Now you're probably wondering, how will the game actually look? You're looking at it. This is undeniably how it's gonna look. I can physically see how the engine is working. But here's an interesting detail that has my... Let me try to catch that a little better. There we are. So it's a laser blade, then a laser blade attached to one piece, attached to the wrist, and it rotates. Meaning it's gonna do some crazy twin blade thing from like Dark Souls 2 or Elden Ring. It's a laser blade. And it's just gonna look really wild. That is absolutely awesome.
Call sign Raven. Priority subject for termination. High on the list.
A coral response from the generator. Watch out!
That's a very Daemon X Machina sort of attack coming in. You don't normally see those kinds of movements in a regular, like, Armored Core game. When it comes to, like, mech designs doing an attack. Where it's like the...
Why hide behind another's call sign?
As for, like, all this mess of, like, projectiles and that, that's just common Armored Core. It's just straight up. Like, if you don't believe me, you haven't played Armored Core. Just straight up. Some people are pretty convinced some of these sort of monstrosities must be like bosses. I'm not convinced. I think they're just regular enemies. I'm convinced they might be just like one up from what's like basic enemies. Only like the mission will like make them maybe like a little more special seeming, and they'll have like certain weak points to exploit.
Let's see how far they can fly. On borrowed wing.
I absolutely love that implication. As in, like, something is not someone else's and they have it now. And it's an analogy on someone else's, like, operating and conducting for themselves. I absolutely love how that sounds. And it's like, it's so wild, crazy, intricate, and also like beautiful all at once. But a lot of that stuff you were just we were just looking at. This is like processing equipment being weaponized. This is absolutely not a weapon. Like, look at those arms. It's not even, like, designed to be... like, very usefully flexible or anything like that. Just flexible enough. So it's purely, like, processing equipment being weaponized. Which honestly can suggest quite a bit in like the nature of some of these missions. Like where we're actually going to. We have like this sort of looks like a Gatling gun to me. Or a machine gun. Which not too new neither. Those are also pretty fun usually. And also pretty popular in games. And now for the last things worth really kind of talking about. This is definitely going to be their star mech of the game. Their star AC, if you will. Stands for Armored Core. But I don't know what his name is going to be. But more than likely it's going to be the case. if they're showing it this hard, it's basically going to be our White Glint or Noblesse Oblige or Supplice or 9-Ball or Scarecrow. Or Fingerprint Fike. Or Oscar. But these are likely going to be some of the present organizations in the game. And then these are likely going to be some of the emblems in the game of other ACs. You're going to defeat many. You're going to collect each one's emblems. You can sport them if you wanted to. You can make your own. I believe you should be able to also kind of like exchange them with people, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was a thing. And by how thorough and beating the game in that, you will also get a few old school reminder emblems, like likely 9-Ball in that, if I'm getting FromSoft right. That's something they've done previously. Now, some of you are probably wondering who is 9-Ball. That's a story for another day. But old school Armored Core veterans, you know, and you felt it. And you've also loved it. And that is the simple answer. The long answer, I would have to find maybe 5 more videos. But yeah, I am absolutely pumped. August 5th of 2023, this year, just a matter of a few months. I am so excited. This is going to be so fun. Yeah, we see this pile bunker missile piece, and what likely caused them fancy big explosion, and that's on the other side of the back. And I cannot wait to explore this further. But thank you so much for watching. Sticking around this long if you have. Hopefully you picked up on some interesting little details you might have missed. But yeah, Blue Asterism Solstice, Winter Solstice 8 for some of you. And you have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye.